tutorial is for 5th grade, Module 6, Lesson 5. In this lesson, we're going to look at parallel and perpendicular lines on the coordinate plane. The first direction says use a straight edge to construct a line that goes through points A and B. Label the line E. You can see I have already drawn my line through points A and B, and I'll go ahead and label that line as line E. The next problem says line E is parallel to which axis? So as a reminder from previous lessons, the vertical axis or the vertical line is axis Y, and the horizontal axis at the bottom here is axis X. So it's always a good idea to label those axes as soon as we come to a new coordinate plane. So now I'm looking for the axis that is parallel to line E. So by being parallel to the x-axis, it means it runs in the same direction. The two lines will always be the same distance apart, and they will never cross each other. So you can see that line E is parallel to the x-axis. And line E is perpendicular to the y-axis. By perpendicular, we mean when the two lines cross each other, it forms a right angle. So where line E intersects with the axis Y, a right angle is formed. And that tells us that those two lines are perpendicular. Question C says to plot two more lines on line E and name them C and D. So I can just choose any points on line E. So I'll choose this one, and I'll call that C. And I'll choose this one and call it D. Now we're to give the coordinates of all of the points that are on line E. To find the ordered pair for A, I would start at the origin. I would move over until I'm underneath the A and determine that point. Well, we have the 5 and the 10 located on the axis, and I can count to see that each square on my grid is 1 unit. So the A is above the 3 on the x-axis. So the x-coordinate is 3. And then if I travel up that line, I can see that the A is across from the 4 point on the y-axis. So the y-coordinate would be 4. So point A is found at 3, 4. We'll do the same thing for point B. I'll move over on the x-axis. I see that it is at 11 for its x-coordinate. I'll travel up that line and see that the B is across from point 4 on the y-axis. And then for my point C, I'm going to start at the origin, move over, and I see that my C is above the 5 on the x-axis, and it is across from the 4 on the y-axis. And let's do point D. Start at the origin, move over. The D would be above the 8 on the x-axis, so its x-coordinate is 8, and the D is across from point 4 on the y-axis. Question E says, what do all of the points on line E have in common? Well, you can see they all have a y-coordinate of 4. So the x-coordinates are different, but all the y-coordinates are 4. Here's a new coordinate plane. As I mentioned before, I'm going to start by labeling both axes. So I have my y-axis and my x-axis. The first question says to plot the following points on the coordinate plane. So I'm going to plot point P at 1 1/2 along the x-axis and 1/2 across from the y-axis. So I'll move across the bottom to 1 1/2, go up to where it intersects with 1/2 on the y-axis, and that is point P. Point Q will be at 1 1/2 and 2 1/2. So again, I'll move over to 1 1/2, travel up that line until I'm across from 2 1/2, and that would be point Q. Point R is at 1 1/2 and 1 1/2. So I'll start at the origin, move over 1 1/2, and travel up the line to 1 1/2, and that's point R. and point S is 1 1/2 and 2. Travel over to 1 1/2, travel up the line to 2, and that is point S. Now it says to use a straight edge to draw a line to connect these points and label the line H. And here's my line running through all 4 of those points, and I'll label that line H. Question C says circle the correct word. Line H is either parallel or perpendicular to the x-axis. Well, the x-axis runs across the bottom, and you can see that where line H intersects with the x-axis, a right angle is formed. So those 2 lines are perpendicular. And you'll notice that in our ordered pairs, they all have matching x coordinates for the ordered pairs. And that created a perpendicular line to the x-axis. Now in these questions, we're going to picture that coordinate plane in our heads. Question 3 says, for each pair of points below, think about the line that joins them. For which pairs is the line parallel to the x-axis? And we'll circle all of the answers that apply. If we think back to our first coordinate plane, we ended up with a line that was parallel to the x-axis, and the ordered pairs all had the same y coordinate. So I'm going to look at each of my answers. Answer A does not have matching y coordinates because it's 2 and 4, so it's not answer A. Answer B does have matching y coordinates, 9 and 9. So I know that that would form a line that's parallel to the x-axis. Answer C does not have matching y coordinates, so that would not be a correct answer either. Now, question 4 says, for each pair of points below, think about the line that joins them. For which pairs is a line parallel to the y-axis? Well, if it's going to be parallel to the y-axis, it needs to be a vertical line. And if you think about the second coordinate plane we worked on, we created a vertical line, and all of the x coordinates were the same. So if I look at my answer choices, answer A does have matching x coordinates. So that would create a line that is vertical and parallel to the y-axis. Question B does not have matching x coordinates, so that would not be a correct answer. Question C does have matching x coordinates, so that would also be a correct answer. That would form a line that is vertical and parallel to the x-axis. The next problem says write the coordinate pairs of 3 points that can be connected to construct a line that is 5 units to the right of and parallel to the x-axis. So the x-axis is a vertical line. We need our points to be 5 units to the right of that line. That means that when we start at the origin, we're always going to move 5 units over on the x-axis. So for example, one of my ordered pairs could be 5, 4. That means I'm going to travel 5 units over on the x-axis and up 4 units. Another ordered pair could be 5, 2. I would travel over 5 units and up 2. And a third ordered pair could be 5, 3. I would travel over 5 units and up 3. If I connected all 3 of those points, it would form a vertical line parallel to the y-axis, and it would be 5 units away from the y-axis. Question 6 says, write the coordinate pairs of 3 points that lie exactly on the x-axis. So that means if I start at the origin and move over along the x-axis, I do not have any vertical movement. I do not go up any line. So that means I could move over on the x-axis 3 units, but I would not travel up the y-axis. Or I could travel over 5 units, and again I would not travel up the y-axis. And finally, I could travel over 4 units, and I would not travel vertically along the y-axis. So those are 3 points that would lie exactly on the x-axis. So you can see the patterns that form with our ordered pairs when we're creating parallel and perpendicular lines.